Before I start, I understand that some people may be a bit bored just listening to me rant. Whoops, wrong word. I meant talk about history. So enjoy this video with the music I have in the background. Other than that, let's begin. In our society, calculus is used in most work environments, from being a useful tool to civil engineers and statisticians, to being used as a useful concept to programmers with computer animation and game development. There are plenty of other positions that use the fundamentals of calculus. Those are just a few good examples. The thing is, in most of our educational systems, especially in our calculus classes, we are taught only to understand what these fundamentals are and tend to overlook the historical aspect of calculus. In other terms, the drama behind the creation of calculus. So, because I feel a bit lazy, I will give myself roughly 2 to 2.5 minutes to tell you as much as I can about the Leibniz Newton controversy. Starting now. This feud was between Isaac Newton and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, whom had similar concepts on their individual works on the creations of calculus. However, between the two, Newton focused his work with the method of fluxions and fluents, with much use of geometrical proofs to be the base of his own theory, thus a large focus on limits and base of reality on his problems around calculus. While Leibniz pushed much of his work with different notations, which consisted of his works with summa and differentia, based originally upon finding the area under the graph of a function. The controversy between these two can be seen through a few points. In 1666 was when Newton had originally devised his first main substantial ideas of calculus, which somehow became lost. Don't know how, just became lost. While in 1674, Leibniz began working on his own philosophy and forms of calculus. It was until 1684 when Leibniz published his ideas of differential calculus, and in 1686 published his ideas of integral calculus. While a year later, the Brit published Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, which consisted with Newton's ideas like his laws of motion and universal gravitation, and plenty of other ideas based around other scientists' concepts, and which consisted a basis of calculus in Newton's work. Thus it deemed that Leibniz was the original creator behind calculus. However, Newton felt as if Leibniz took his own work and based his argument around the fact that both have sent letters on mathematical concepts in the past, and some may have consisted of Newton's work, as well as the fact that Newton's colleagues have collaborated with Leibniz. On one such occasion, where Newton sent his papers to John Collins, was during a collaboration between Leibniz and Collins, who showed Leibniz Newton's work. However, Leibniz has stated that these papers and other papers were worth nothing and were termed as garbage. However, even with his small refutes, Leibniz couldn't exactly go up against Newton due to the fact that there was barely anyone backing up Leibniz, while Newton had dozens of colleagues able to back him up, along with the Royal Society, which had a large bias for him and not Leibniz. It was an unfair advantage. And it was this constant argument between these two geniuses of who really created calculus that created this controversial event. I could go into further detail on how these arguments went through with a more one-sided bias, but my laziness is at an all-time high. I will end it off with how England, for decades to almost a century more, kept Newton's ideas. They were like an entitled kid saying that all his ideas were right and everyone should just listen to him, for teaching calculus in their educational systems. While the rest of Europe would use Leibniz's notational forms of calculus and much of his ideas, as well as the fact that we have learned and been taught at present time Leibniz's concepts with the exact notational forms and equations. At the end of the day, we can argue with who was right and how one or the other created calculus for a good amount of time. Even with both Leibniz's death and along later later on with Newton's, the people would still argue on who created calculus, and it would just be a continuous argument. However, at its true form, they were both the co-founders of calculus today, to this day. This was just some, how to say it, screw up between geniuses that created one of the biggest events in mathematical history. Thanks for listening.